Hi there. My name is Celeste, and this is the story of how my own father betrayed me. It started with a dinner I never should have gone to. My father, Lucian, sat across from me, wearing that smug little smile, and announced that he had given away my oceanfront condo, the home my grandmother left to me, to his new wife, Delphine. Just like that. I thought it was a mistake. I thought I could reason with him, but I was wrong, because the truth was worse than I ever imagined. Forged documents, financial sabotage, a woman who had been playing him and me all along. And when I fought back, they did everything they could to ruin me. A break-in at my home, threats, a legal battle meant to drain me dry. Even my own father turned against me, freezing my accounts, trying to force me into silence. But they underestimated me. This isn't just a story about money. It's about family betrayal. It's about standing up for yourself when everyone expects you to break. It's about finding strength when the people you trusted the most take everything from you. Because in the end, I didn't just fight for my home. I fought for me. The restaurant shimmered under the warm glow of chandeliers, the hum of conversations blending with the clinking of glasses. The scent of freshly grilled seafood filled the air, but I barely noticed. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I followed the hostess, my stomach tightening with unease. Lucian, my father, had insisted on this dinner. A family gathering, he'd called it, though it felt anything but. He wasn't the sentimental type. If he had called me here, it was for a reason. As I approached the table, I saw them. Lucian, looking uncharacteristically tense, and Delphine Ardent, his wife, practically glowing with satisfaction. That was my first clue. She was too pleased with herself, like a cat that had swallowed a songbird. "Celeste, darling," she greeted, reaching for the glass of white wine in front of her. "You look lovely." I ignored her and turned to my father. "Why are we here?" Lucian cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "Sit down, Celeste. Let's order first." I stayed standing. "Tell me now." His sigh was heavy. "I've transferred the condo to Delphine." The words landed like a slap, sucking the air from the room. The blood drained from my face. "You did what?" My voice was steady, but my fingers curled into my lap beneath the table. Lucian shifted uncomfortably. "Delphine deserves it. She's been—" "No!" I cut in, my pulse hammering. "You don't get to make that decision. Grandma left that condo to me." Delphine leaned in, her lips curling at the corners. "Celeste, there's no need to be dramatic." Dramatic? My grandmother, Eleanor Moreau, had made her wishes clear before she passed. The oceanfront condo was mine. It was more than property. It was my childhood, my memories, my legacy. I turned to Lucien, voice low and cold. "You can't do this." He finally met my gaze, his own full of something I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe? Or regret. "It's legal, Celeste. I have power of attorney. The paperwork is finalized." Finalized. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a bad joke. He had really done it. Delphine sipped her wine, watching me over the rim of her glass. "I understand this is upsetting, dear, but the truth is, Lucian and I have big plans for the condo. It's simply not fair for such a valuable property to sit unused." "Unused?" I nearly laughed. "I live there." Lucian exhaled. "Celeste, you travel for work. You're hardly there." I could barely hear him past the roaring in my ears. I forced myself to take a slow breath. "I want to see the paperwork." Delphine's fingers tensed around her glass. She didn't like that. Lucien hesitated, then straightened. "It's all in order, but if you need proof, go ahead and check." I pulled out my phone and composed a quick email to Matthias Sinclair, our family's attorney. I looked up, meeting Delphine's gaze head-on. "I will!" Her smile faltered. I pushed back my chair. "We're done here." Lucian started to say something, but I was already walking away, my heels clicking against the floor. By the time I stepped into the night air, my hands were shaking. This wasn't over. If my father thought I would accept this, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Hours later, I unlocked my condo door, still fuming. I had spent the entire drive replaying the conversation in my mind, growing angrier by the second. I dropped my keys on the counter and kicked off my heels. The place was dark, silent, but something felt off. A whisper of unease crawled up my spine. I flicked on the lights. The living room was untouched, so was the kitchen. But as I stepped toward my office, a chill ran through me. The door was ajar. My desk drawers were pulled open, papers scattered across the floor. I sucked in a breath. Someone had been here. Heart pounding, I scanned the room, my mind racing. The only thing worth searching for in this condo was the legal documents I kept in my filing cabinet. I rushed forward, yanking it open. The folder that held my grandmother's will was missing. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Walk away before things get ugly." I gripped my phone, my pulse hammering. Delphine had just made her first mistake. Now it was my turn. I stormed into Matthias Sinclair's office the next morning, my anger barely restrained. The scent of fresh coffee and polished wood filled the air, but I wasn't here for pleasantries. Matthias looked up from his desk, startled by my entrance. "Celeste?" I tossed my phone onto his desk, the threatening message still glowing on the screen. "Someone broke into my condo last night," I said, my voice tight. "And then I got this." His brows furrowed as he read the text. He exhaled slowly, placing the phone down. "This isn't just a simple inheritance dispute, is it?" "No," I said, "and I need answers." He turned to his laptop, fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. "Let's start with the transfer records." The screen flickered as the property database loaded. Matthias leaned forward, scanning the documents. His jaw tightened. "What?" I demanded, my pulse racing. He sighed, turning the screen toward me. "Celeste, your father didn't legally have the right to transfer the condo." I let out a shaky breath, relief creeping in, but Matthias wasn't finished. "That's not the real problem," he added. A cold prickle ran down my spine. "Then what is?" Matthias hesitated, then zoomed in on the document. My stomach lurched. The signature on the transfer papers, it wasn't my father's. It was forged. I gripped the armrest of my chair. "So not only did my father betray me, but he let Delphine forge his signature?" Matthias leaned back, crossing his arms. "That's what it looks like." I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Unbelievable. If my father was involved in this, he had more to lose than just money. I wasn't going to sit back and let them get away with it. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lucien. He answered on the third ring. "Celeste," he said, his tone cautious. "We need to talk." He hesitated. "Celeste, it's complicated. You need to understand." "No, Dad, you need to understand," I snapped. "You let someone forge your signature, and now you're legally involved in fraud." Silence. Then, a weary sigh. "Fine. Meet me at the house." I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about property anymore. It was about exposing the truth, no matter who it hurt. Lucian's house loomed in front of me, grand and immaculate, yet suddenly foreign. I stepped inside, the marble floors gleaming under the chandelier's light. This house had once been a place of warmth, a place where I ran through the halls as a child. Now it felt eerily cold. Lucian stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn as I entered. "You got my call," I said, closing the door behind me. "I did." His voice was quiet. I walked forward, tossing the printed transfer documents onto the coffee table. "Let's talk about this." His shoulders tensed. I pointed to the signature. "This isn't yours." Lucian finally turned to face me. His expression was tired, older than I remembered. "Celeste, you have to let this go." I scoffed. "Let it go? My home was stolen. Someone broke in last night, and now I have threats coming to my phone. So no, Dad, I won't let this go." His jaw clenched. "I didn't want it to come to this." Then why did you let it? I stepped closer, voice trembling with fury. Why did you betray me? Lucian lowered his gaze. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was afraid. Afraid? A hollow laugh escaped me. Of what? Losing Delphine? He shook his head, rubbing his temples. You don't understand. She has leverage over me. If I didn't sign, she would have ruined me. I inhaled sharply, realization dawning. This wasn't just about greed. Delphine had something on him. And whatever it was big enough that he had chosen to sacrifice me instead of standing up to her. So instead, I said, voice dangerously low, you destroyed me. Lucien flinched, but he didn't argue. I took another step forward, my heart pounding. You have one chance to fix this, Dad, or I'll do it without you. Lucien didn't answer me. He just looked away, and that told me everything I needed to know. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. You still have a choice, Dad, I said, my voice quieter this time. You can fight this. Lucien exhaled heavily. It's not that simple, Celeste. I stared at him. It is. You either stand up to her, or you let her destroy everything. He didn't move. He didn't even look at me. And that was my answer. I felt my chest tighten, but I swallowed the hurt. Then you've already made your choice. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out, slamming the door behind me. If my father wasn't going to stop her, then I would. And I wouldn't hold back. By the time I reached my condo, my thoughts were running a mile a minute. I needed to call Matthias. I needed to start digging into Delphine's past. I froze. The door was ajar. A sick feeling coiled in my stomach as I slowly pushed it open. My living room was destroyed, furniture overturned, drawers ripped out, shattered glass littering the floor. My coffee table had been knocked over, its legs snapped. But none of that was the worst part. I stepped toward the bathroom, my breath catching when I saw it. Scrawled across the mirror in deep red lipstick, "Stop digging." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I gripped the edge of the sink, forcing myself to look at my own reflection. My face was pale, my jaw tight. This is how she operates. Fear. Intimidation. Well, screw that. I grabbed my phone and called Matthias. Celeste, he answered immediately. What's wrong? She broke in again, I said, my voice sharp. She tore the place apart. Silence. Then a slow exhale. Did she take anything? No, I muttered. She didn't have to. She wanted to send a message. Matthias hesitated. Celeste, be careful. Delphine isn't someone who plays fair. I ran a hand through my hair, my fingers shaking with adrenaline. I don't care what it takes. We're taking her down. A pause. Then we need allies. I glanced at the mirror one last time before turning away. Then let's find some. The next morning, I met Matthias at his office. He had a name. James Cartwright, he said, sliding a file across the desk. I opened it, scanning the contents. A wealthy investor, once powerful, now ruined. Delphine's second husband? I asked. Matthias nodded. She drained him dry, left him bankrupt. He's the reason she perfected her game. I glanced up. Does he know about me? He does now, Matthias said, and he's willing to talk. I hesitated. Could I trust him? Or was he too broken to fight back? There was only one way to find out. The coffee shop was quiet, tucked away on a side street, the kind of place where people whispered instead of talked. James Cartwright was already waiting when I arrived. He looked older than I expected, the years etched into his face. When he saw me, he gave a dry, humorless smile. So, you're the next one on Delphine's list, huh? And just like that, I realized I wasn't the first. And if I wasn't careful, I wouldn't be the last. James took a sip of his coffee, then leaned forward, his voice low. Let me tell you exactly how she operates. I gripped my cup, bracing myself. She's a master at reading people, he continued. She knows exactly what they want to hear. With me, it was companionship, someone who understood my world, my ambitions. With your father? I'd bet she played the devoted, supportive wife, always making him feel like he was the one in control. I swallowed hard. That sounded exactly like Delphine. James set his cup down with a quiet clink. She finds a way in, earns trust, then isolates you from anyone who might question her. And by the time you realize what she's doing, she already owns a piece of your life. He ran a hand over his face, his exhaustion evident. She didn't just ruin me financially. She torched my reputation, whispered just enough poison into the right ears to make me seem like the bad guy. By the time she left, I had nothing. My stomach twisted. How did she get away with it? I asked. James gave a bitter chuckle. She's careful. Never leaves a paper trail, never makes direct threats herself. She lets people like your father, or her lawyers, handle the dirty work. I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my hands from shaking. Celeste, James said, his voice softer now. Delphine doesn't just take your money. She takes everything, your future, your reputation, and she never leaves loose ends. I met his gaze. Are you saying she's dangerous? His jaw tightened. I'm saying she's not done with you yet. A chill ran down my spine. The real fight hadn't even begun. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was spinning with everything James had told me. By morning, I was sitting across from Matthias in his office, gripping a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. She's done this before, I said, voice steady. She knows exactly how to cover her tracks. Matthias nodded. And that's what makes her dangerous. If we're going after her, we need to be airtight. I took a deep breath. Then let's make it airtight. We went to work. Matthias started digging into financial records, pulling every document he could find. He reached out to old contacts, people who had once worked with Delphine, people who might have seen her tactics up close. Meanwhile, I started reaching out to other victims. I found one, a woman named Evelyn Marks. She had been engaged to Delphine's business partner years ago, until Delphine convinced him to cut Evelyn out of their company. I picked up my phone to call her, my fingers hovering over the dial. My screen lit up with a new message. You're playing a dangerous game, Celeste. Are you sure you want to keep going? I stared at the words, a slow anger simmering beneath my skin. I was done being afraid. I immediately called a security company. By the afternoon, surveillance cameras were being installed around my condo. I wasn't going to make it easy for her to sneak up on me again. But there was still one more thing I had to do. I drove to my father's house. Lucien opened the door, looking like he hadn't slept much either. I'm not here for another fight, I said, stepping inside. I'm here to warn you. He sighed. Celeste, I don't... No, I cut in. Listen to me. She's done this before. James Cartwright, Evelyn Marks. There's a pattern. She finds people, exploits them, then discards them. And if you think you're different, you're wrong. Lucien ran a hand down his face. It's not that simple. It is, I snapped. You think she's going to stop with me? One day, she'll turn on you too. His expression faltered, but only for a second. I shook my head. Fine, do what you want, but don't come crying to me when she turns on you next, Dad. I turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. Delphine wasn't just trying to scare me. She was preparing for war, and I was ready. The next morning, I woke up to something much worse, a letter taped to my door marked urgent. My stomach dropped. I hesitated before reaching for it, my fingers hovering over the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive. This wasn't just some random threat. It was deliberate, calculated. I tore it open. Walk away while you still can. This isn't a fight you can win. The words were handwritten in red ink, each letter bold and deliberate. My pulse pounded in my ears. Who the hell does she think she is? A slow anger burned through my fear, tightening my grip on the paper. This wasn't a warning. It was a challenge. I was in Matthias's office less than an hour later, the letter clenched in my fist. He read it twice, then set it down, rubbing his temple. She's escalating. No kidding, I snapped. First, she breaks into my home. Now she's leaving threats on my doorstep. Matthias sighed. She's not just trying to intimidate you, Celeste. She's testing you, seeing how far she can push before you break. I leaned forward. She's about to find out I don't break. He studied me for a long moment. Celeste, you need to be careful. Delphine has nothing to lose. I folded my arms. Good, neither do I. Matthias didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. I wasn't going anywhere, but Delphine was about to wish she had. I stormed into my father's office later that afternoon, my pulse still thrumming with adrenaline. Lucien was sitting behind his mahogany desk, flipping through some legal documents. He looked up, startled by my entrance. Celeste! I slapped the letter down onto his desk. Do you still think she's innocent? Lucien's face darkened as he picked it up. His fingers trembled slightly as he scanned the words. He set it down carefully. Celeste, I told you to drop this. I let out a harsh laugh. And I told you I wouldn't. He exhaled, running a hand over his face. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. My voice was sharp, cutting. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been letting Delphine get away with this for years. Lucien slammed his fist on the desk. I didn't have a choice. Silence. I stared at him. You always had a choice, Dad. You just chose her over me. Lucien swallowed, his shoulders slumping. His voice was quieter when he spoke again. It was never about choosing. It was about survival. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to nod. And now I'm making my own choice. I turned on my heel and walked out, his voice calling after me. But this time, I didn't look back. Matthias and I filed the legal challenge that evening. The paperwork was official, an attempt to void the fraudulent transfer of the condo and challenge Delphine's claim. As we signed the final document, Matthias glanced up at me. This is it, Celeste. Once we do this, there's no turning back. I took a deep breath. Good. I don't plan on turning back. A process server delivered the official summons to Delphine the next morning. She didn't flinch when she read it. Instead, she smirked, holding the document between two perfectly manicured fingers, as if it was nothing more than an invitation to a garden party. Celeste, darling, she murmured, her voice silky smooth. Do you really think you're going to win? She wasn't afraid, and that terrified me. 2 days later, I woke up to the news that changed everything. Delphine had made her first move. My phone buzzed aggressively on my nightstand. I groggily reached for it, blinking against the harsh morning light. It was Matthias. Celeste, he said the moment I answered. His voice was clipped, serious. She's filed a counter-lawsuit against you. I bolted upright. What? She's claiming harassment, defamation, and emotional distress, he continued. She's trying to paint you as an obsessed, vengeful stepdaughter who can't accept reality. I ran a hand through my hair, my pulse pounding. You have got to be kidding me. She's not, Matthias said. She's playing dirty. She knows she can't win outright, so she's trying to drown you in legal fees and stall the case. I threw off my blankets and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. So what do we do? Matthias sighed. We counter her counter. We'll file a motion to dismiss based on the fraudulent nature of her initial transfer. But Celeste, I could already sense the warning in his voice. She's trying to make this a war of attrition. The longer this drags out, the more it'll cost you. I exhaled slowly, forcing my emotions into check. She wants a war? Fine. Let's give her one. But I wasn't prepared for just how far she was willing to go. That afternoon, I logged into my bank account to check my legal fund. Access denied. My brows furrowed. I tried again. A message popped up. Account frozen. Contact your bank. Dread pooled in my stomach. I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank, pressing through the automated menu until I got a representative. Ms. Moreau, the woman on the other end said politely, your account has been temporarily restricted. due to a cosigner dispute. I gripped my phone tighter. Excuse me? Your father, Lucien Moreau, is listed as a cosigner on your trust fund, she explained. A block was placed on withdrawals until further notice. Ice ran through my veins. Lucien. I hung up and immediately drove to his office. Lucien was behind his desk, rubbing his temples when I stormed in. He barely had time to look up before I threw the bank statement onto his desk. You let her do this? I demanded. His face paled. Celeste! After everything, you still let her control my money. My voice shook with rage. I didn't have a choice, he said, his voice strained. I scoffed. No, Dad, you did. And you chose her again. Lucien leaned forward, lowering his voice. She told me if I didn't, she'd go after me next. I let out a bitter laugh. So you sold me out instead? His silence was all the answer I needed. I turned to leave. You made your decision. Now I'll make mine. I had lost access to my own money, but Delphine was about to learn. There are some things you can't buy. That evening, my phone rang again. Cartwright, I muttered as I picked up. Celeste, James's voice came through, steady and controlled. I heard what happened. I hesitated. How? He let out a dry chuckle. Delphine isn't exactly subtle. She plays the same game every time. She did it to me, too. I leaned back against my couch, rubbing my temples. So, what? You called to say I told you so? No, he said. I called to offer you help. I frowned. Why? James hesitated. Because I know what she does to people. She ruined my life, and I won't let her do it again. A lump formed in my throat. For the first time in days, I felt something unfamiliar. Relief. Why would I trust you? I asked. You don't have to, he said, but you need resources, and I have them. I exhaled. What do you have in mind? The next morning, I met Matthias and James in Matthias's office. We need to go public, James said, leaning forward. Exposing Delphine through the courts will take time, but exposing her in the media? That could turn the tide. Matthias nodded. If we find the right people to back up our case, we can force her into a corner. I glanced between them. Delphine wanted a war. Now she had one. The next morning, I walked into Matthias's office with one goal, taking Delphine down, once and for all. James was already there, sitting across from Matthias, a folder open in front of him. He glanced up as I entered, his expression grim but determined. We're ready, Matthias said, motioning for me to take a seat. I sat down, folding my arms. Tell me what we've got. Matthias leaned forward. We're going public. I exhaled sharply. That's risky. James pushed the folder toward me. Risky, but necessary. I flipped it open, scanning the documents inside. Bank statements, legal filings, emails, even old voicemails. All of this proves that Delphine has run the same scam before, James said. She finds wealthy men, manipulates them, drains them, then moves on. Matthias nodded. The media loves a story like this. We have enough to get a journalist interested. I swallowed. And what if this backfires? James leaned back, crossing his arms. It won't. His voice was steady, but there was something dark beneath it, something personal. Delphine thrives in the shadows, he continued. Bring her into the light, and she'll burn. I looked between them, my fingers tracing the edge of the folder. It was risky, but if we didn't act first, she would. I closed the folder. Do it. The article went live the next morning. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, my stomach twisted in knots as I refreshed the page over and over. The woman who steals lives. How Delphine Ardent preys on the wealthy. It was brutal, director, everything we needed it to be. And people were reading it. The views climbed by the thousands. Then the comments started. She did the same thing to my uncle. Finally, someone is exposing her. Sounds like a bitter ex trying to smear her name. This woman is a fraud. She destroyed my family. My heart pounded as I scrolled through them. Some people believed us, some didn't. And then, a new comment. She won't let this go unanswered. Watch your back. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. A familiar, cold voice slid through the line. Congratulations, Celeste, Delphine purred. You just made the worst mistake of your life. I gripped the phone tighter. You're done, Delphine. It's over. She laughed softly. Oh, sweetheart. You have no idea what's coming. A chill ran through me. The call ended. Before I could process it, Matthias stormed into the room, his expression tight. We have a problem, he said. I stood up, my pulse hammering. What now? He exhaled sharply. Delphine just filed a lawsuit against you. I blinked. What? For defamation and emotional distress. I clenched my fists. She wasn't just fighting me in the courtroom anymore. She was coming for everything I had. By the time I arrived at my condo, there was another surprise waiting for me. A legal notice taped to my front door. My stomach twisted as I yanked it off, my fingers tightening around the thick envelope. I already knew who it was from before I even opened it. Delphine. I tore the envelope open, scanning the first few lines. Plaintiff. Delphine Ardent. Defendant. Celeste Moreau. Allegations. Defamation, harassment, financial damages. I let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You have got to be kidding me! I stormed inside, throwing the papers onto my kitchen counter. My phone was already in my hand before I even realized I was dialing Matthias. He picked up on the second ring. You got it! Oh, I got it! I paced the floor, my breath tight with anger. She's suing me? For what? Telling the truth? Matthias sighed. She's not trying to win in court, Celeste. She's trying to drag this out, make you bleed money until you have no choice but to fold. I gripped the phone tighter. So what do we do? We fight it, obviously. But lawsuits like this can take months, even years, to resolve. She's banking on the fact that you don't have the resources to go the distance. I exhaled slowly, staring down at the papers in front of me. Delphine wasn't trying to beat me. She was trying to break me. The next morning, I met Matthias in his office, but the news wasn't any better. We need to talk about the financials, he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. This lawsuit is going to drain whatever reserves you have left. I clenched my jaw. The problem is, I don't have reserves left. My accounts were still frozen. I had no access to the trust fund my grandmother had left me. No way to fund my legal battle. I gritted my teeth. If I can't pay my legal team, how am I supposed to fight back? Matthias didn't have an answer for that. I barely had time to process before my phone rang again. Lucienne. I almost didn't answer. Almost. I pressed the phone to my ear, my voice cold. What do you want? Lucienne hesitated. Celeste, listen to me. I can fix this. I laughed. Fix it? You mean undo the mess you helped create? His voice was quiet. Drop the case against Delphine, and I'll unfreeze your funds. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't a peace offering. It was a surrender demand. I gripped the phone tighter. You mean surrender? Lucienne's voice softened. I don't want this to destroy you. It's a little late for that, Dad. Silence stretched between us. Then, without another word, I hung up. I stared at my reflection in the window, my hands shaking. Delphine had just turned my own father against me. That night, my phone rang again. James. I heard about Lucienne, he said. You okay? I let out a humorless chuckle. Define okay, he sighed. Listen, I have a way out of this, but it's not conventional. I sat up. What kind of way out? I have a contact, James said. Someone who can get us the kind of evidence that will bury Delphine forever. I frowned. Who? James hesitated, then smirked. Her last business partner, the one who disappeared after she ruined him. I exhaled slowly. I already knew this was risky, but at this point, what choice did I have? Fine, I said. Let's meet him. Delphine thought she had me cornered, but she didn't realize I was about to change the game. I wasn't sure what to expect when I walked into the dimly lit bar, but the man sitting in the corner looked like someone who had lost everything. Elliot Grayson. James had warned me that Delphine had left him ruined, but seeing him in person made it real. His suit, though expensive once, was wrinkled and worn. His shoulders slumped, his fingers curled around a whiskey glass like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I slid into the seat across from him. He barely looked up. "You're the one trying to take her down?" His voice was rough, edged with years of bitterness. "I am," I said, "and I hear you're the one who can help me do it." Elliot let out a humorless chuckle, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "Help? Lady, I barely survived her once. Why would I stick my neck out again?" I leaned forward. "Because she's still doing it, and she won't stop unless we stop her." For the first time, he met my eyes. There was something in his expression, doubt, maybe, or regret. "She destroyed me," he muttered. "Not just my career, my reputation, my family. I went from running million-dollar investments to living paycheck to paycheck, and she walked away untouched." I exhaled, steadying my voice. "Elliot, I know it's risky, but if you have something, anything, that can prove what she's done, I need it." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Fine, but if I do this, you'd better be ready for what you're about to learn." Elliot's apartment was small and cluttered, filled with old paperwork and boxes that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. He pulled out a file from a locked cabinet and dropped it onto the table. "There," he said. "That's what you need." I flipped it open. At first, it looked like standard real estate transactions, but the deeper I read, the clearer it became. These weren't just bad deals. They were fake deals. Shell companies, falsified investment portfolios. Delphine hadn't just manipulated people. She had committed large-scale fraud, fabricating property deals and scamming investors out of millions. I looked up at Elliot, my stomach turning. "This isn't just theft. This is prison time." Elliot nodded grimly. "Exactly." I wasted no time. The moment I left Elliot's place, I called Matthias. When I arrived at his office, he was already poring over the documents. His expression was unreadable, but when he finally spoke, his voice was tight. "This isn't just a civil case anymore," he said. "If we take this to the authorities, it's criminal." I stared at the files in front of me, my pulse pounding. For the first time, I saw a way to end this for good. That night, I was about to pour myself a glass of wine when I heard it. A soft rustling outside my door. My body tensed. I set the glass down and moved toward the entrance, heart hammering. I bent down, peering through the peephole, but the hallway was empty. Then I noticed it, a single envelope. I picked it up slowly, my fingers stiff as I pulled out the contents. A photo. Of me. Taken just hours ago, walking into Elliot's apartment. My stomach twisted as I flipped it over, scrawled across the bottom in sharp black ink. "You don't know who you're messing with. Walk away now." A slow, cold rage burned through me. She was watching me, tracking me. I gripped the photo tight, my nails digging into the edges. Number I wasn't backing down. I picked up my phone and hit dial. "Matthias," I said, my voice steady. "It's time. We're taking this to the feds." I didn't sleep that night. By morning, Matthias and I were sitting across from a federal investigator, laying everything on the table. The room was sterile, gray walls, a polished wooden desk, and the faint scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. The man across from us, Special Agent Carter, had the kind of presence that made people nervous. His eyes were sharp, scanning the documents we had brought with an unreadable expression. Matthias slid the files forward. "This contains fraudulent property transactions, shell companies, and witness statements from Elliot Grayson, one of her former business partners. Delphine Ardent has been running this scam for years." Carter flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing. "This is substantial," he murmured. I leaned forward. "So, does that mean you'll take the case? Carter didn't answer right away. Instead, he set the papers down and folded his hands together. It means we'll look into it, he said carefully. But these cases take time. You can't expect immediate action. Frustration bubbled under my skin. She's already trying to shut me down. If you wait too long, she'll find a way to cover her tracks. Carter held my gaze. I understand your urgency, Miss Moreau, but these things have to be done right. I forced myself to nod. We had done everything we could. Now I just had to wait. That afternoon, Matthias and I were still at his office when his phone rang. He picked up, his face darkening as he listened. When he hung up, he looked at me grimly. She made her next move, he said. My stomach clenched. What now? She just filed an emergency motion in court, Matthias said. She's demanding an immediate ruling in her favor on the condo. My pulse pounded in my ears. She's trying to rush a decision before the authorities can act. Matthias nodded. If the judge grants this, she'll legally own the condo. Even if the fraud case moves forward, it won't undo the ruling. A wave of frustration hit me, but I shoved it down. Then we fight it, he sighed. Celeste, I need you to understand. This hearing is our last shot. If she wins this case, she gets everything she wanted. I squared my shoulders. Then she won't win. A hearing was scheduled for the following week. It would be the biggest fight of my life. That evening, I returned to my condo, drained but determined. I was unlocking my door when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. Lucien stood at the bottom of the stairs. I froze, gripping my keys tighter. It had been months since he had come here. His face was drawn, exhaustion written in every line. Celeste, he said softly, I don't know if I can fix this, but I can try. I swallowed hard. Then start by telling me the truth. He nodded, stepping closer. I was stupid. I let her manipulate me, and when I realized what she was doing, I was too weak to stop her. Something inside me cracked, but I didn't let it show. I can't promise to forgive you, I said quietly, but I won't fight this alone anymore. For the first time in a long time, I had an ally I never expected. My father. The courtroom was packed. Delphine sat across from me, poised and confident. But for the first time, I saw something else in her eyes. Fear. It was fleeting, barely visible beneath the carefully applied mask of elegance and control, but I knew it was there. She had spent years orchestrating every move, manipulating everyone around her like chess pieces. But this time, she wasn't holding the board. Matthias straightened beside me as the judge entered, and the room settled into tense silence. All rise, the bailiff announced. I took a steadying breath, my heart hammering. This was it, the moment I had been fighting for. Matthias rose first. Your Honor, this case is simple. The oceanfront condo in question was left to my client, Celeste Moreau, in a legal and binding will. The transfer of ownership was done fraudulently by the defendant, Delphine Ardent, who had no rightful claim to the property. Delphine's attorney, a sleek man with graying hair, stood next. Your Honor, this case is not about fraud. It's about an emotional woman lashing out in anger over a family dispute. Ms. Moreau has harassed my client, spread defamatory accusations, and is using this courtroom to prolong a personal vendetta. I clenched my fists beneath the table, forcing myself to remain still. I knew what Delphine was trying to do, bait me into reacting, making me look irrational. But I had come too far to lose control now. The judge turned to Matthias. Proceed. Matthias nodded, stepping toward the bench. We have documented proof that the transfer was unlawful. But more importantly, we have something that goes beyond this single case. He glanced at me, then at Delphine, before reaching into his briefcase. And just like that, everything changed. The courtroom went deathly silent as Matthias placed a thick stack of documents in front of the judge. These records, provided by a former business associate of Ms. Ardent, show a pattern of fraudulent real estate transactions spanning over a decade, Matthias said calmly. She has not only deceived Mr. Moreau, but has orchestrated similar scams in multiple cases, draining her victims financially before discarding them. The judge flipped through the documents, his expression darkening. Delphine shifted in her seat. Her confident posture stiffened, her fingers tightening around the arms of her chair. Her attorney's face paled as he skimmed the pages. Your Honor, these allegations have nothing to do with the matter at hand. They have everything to do with Ms. Ardent's credibility, the judge interrupted sharply, and whether or not she is a trustworthy party in this dispute. Delphine's jaw tightened. For the first time, her perfectly curated confidence was cracking. I met her gaze across the courtroom, and for the first time in my life, I saw it. Uncertainty. Then, just when I thought she had run out of moves, Delphine did something I hadn't expected. She turned to Lucienne. She stood slowly, her voice shifting into something softer, pleading. Lucienne, tell them the truth. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. She took a step closer to where my father sat in the front row, her perfectly rehearsed desperation seeping into her voice. Tell them you wanted me to have the condo, she said, her eyes glistening. Tell them this was your decision. I inhaled sharply. Lucien's hands trembled. His face was pale, his eyes darting between her and me. I held my breath. For years, my father had let Delphine manipulate him, control him, twist his guilt and grief into a weapon against me. Was he strong enough to break free now? Lucien looked at Delphine. Then he looked at me, and I saw something shift in his face. He exhaled shakily and turned back to the judge. No, he said, his voice stronger than I had ever heard it. This ends today. The courtroom fell silent. For the first time, Delphine had nothing left to say. The judge took a deep breath, then lifted his gavel. The decision was coming. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The weight of months of battles, legal and personal, pressed down on me. My hands curled into fists beneath the table, my nails digging into my palms. Delphine sat across from me, her expression carefully neutral, but I saw the way her fingers tapped in erratic rhythm against the table. She was nervous. She should be. The judge adjusted his glasses, then began reading his ruling. This court has reviewed the evidence presented regarding the disputed transfer of the Moreau estate property. Based on the testimony provided, as well as the supporting financial and legal documents, it is my ruling that the transfer was conducted under fraudulent circumstances. I barely breathed. The property, in accordance with the original will, legally belongs to Ms. Celeste Moreau. A sharp exhale left my lips. Relief crashed over me in waves, my vision blurring for a moment. I had won. Matthias squeezed my shoulder. It's over. But across the room, Delphine barely moved. Her body stiffened, her lips pressing into a thin line, her perfect composure cracking at the edges. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, due to the evidence presented regarding potential criminal fraud, this court recommends further investigation into Ms. Ardent's past dealings. Delphine's attorney shot to his feet. Your Honor. The ruling stands, the judge interrupted firmly. Court is adjourned. He slammed his gavel down. It was done. I had won. But Delphine wasn't done yet. As the judge stood to leave, the room erupting into murmurs, Delphine suddenly shot to her feet. This isn't over, Celeste. Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. I turned to face her. Her carefully controlled expression had shattered, revealing something raw and venomous beneath. Her eyes burned with something dark, something dangerous. You think you've won? She sneered, stepping closer. You have no idea what I'm capable of. The room went still. For a split second, the courtroom's security hesitated, caught off guard by the sheer malice in her voice. Then the bailiff moved. Ms. Ardent, he warned. Delphine ignored him, her gaze locked on me. I made you fight for this, she whispered, low enough that only I could hear. And I will make you pay for it. The judge slammed his gavel again. Ms. Ardent, that's enough. Delphine didn't resist as the bailiff stepped in, gripping her arm and guiding her toward the exit. She moved gracefully, still trying to hold on to the illusion of control. but I saw the fury in her rigid posture. Just before she disappeared from view, she turned her head and met my eyes one last time. I didn't look away. She was gone, but I knew better than to believe that meant I was safe. The courtroom emptied slowly. People whispered, exchanging glances as they filed out. Reporters stood by the doors, already on their phones, likely preparing headlines. I barely noticed. Lucien was standing in front of me. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. His shoulders were hunched, his face drawn, as if the weight of everything that had happened had finally settled onto him all at once. "I'm sorry, Celeste," he said. His voice was rough, hollow. "For everything." I swallowed the lump in my throat, my emotions a tangled mess. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. "I know, Dad," I said quietly, "but sorry doesn't fix everything." His face twisted with something like grief. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Lucien didn't call after me. I had won the battle. But at what cost? Victory didn't feel the way I thought it would. And Delphine's final words haunted me more than I cared to admit. I had won. The condo was mine. Her fraud was exposed. She had been dragged out of that courtroom, humiliated, powerless. So why did I still feel like I was waiting for something? Like a final shoe to drop? I woke up in my condo, officially mine again, yet everything felt different. The walls, the furniture, even the ocean view, it all seemed colder, unfamiliar, as if I were standing in someone else's home. I had fought so hard to reclaim this place, but standing here, I realized I had lost so much along the way. Days passed, and Lucian never called. I debated reaching out. Even after everything, he was still my father. A part of me wanted to believe that what he had said in court, his choice to stand with me, meant something. But when I picked up my phone, my fingers hovered over his contact for a long moment before I set it back down. Maybe, in time, I could forgive him, but not today. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't safe. Every night, I double-checked the locks on my doors. I installed a new security system. I told myself I was being paranoid, that Delphine had no power left. "She's gone, Celeste. You won." Then why did it feel like she was still out there, watching? The nightmares started soon after. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced I had heard something. A creaking floorboard, a rustling outside my window. Most nights, it was nothing. Until it wasn't. One evening, I checked my mailbox. Inside, wedged between a few bills and a real estate flyer, was an unmarked envelope. Something about it sent an immediate chill down my spine. I opened it slowly, my hands suddenly unsteady. There was no letter, no words. Just a single sheet of paper. A photograph. Of me. Taken from across the street, my blood ran cold. She was gone. But she wasn't done with me. I clutched the photo tightly as I sat in Matthias's office the next morning. James leaned forward, scanning the image. "This was taken recently." Matthias nodded. "She's still watching." I exhaled sharply, pressing my fingers against my temples. James broke the silence first. "You need to leave, Celeste. Get out of Miami for a while." I looked up at him, shaking my head. "No?" Matthias frowned. "Celeste, she's dangerous. We don't know what her next move is." "I don't care." My voice was steady, resolute. "I won't run. Not after everything I fought for." James leaned back, studying me. "Then what do you plan to do?" I looked between them, my heartbeat steadying, my fear hardening into something stronger. "If Delphine wants to come after me," I said, "she won't find the same woman she tried to destroy." I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to make damn sure she never had power over me again. I had thought the fight was over, but as I stepped out onto my balcony that night, I realized I was wrong. The air was thick with the salt of the ocean, a breeze rolling in from the shore. The city lights flickered below, casting long shadows across the streets. I exhaled, trying to shake off the lingering weight of everything that had happened. Then I saw it. A figure. standing too far to make out the details, but close enough to send a jolt of unease through me. They weren't moving, just lingering on the sidewalk, half shrouded in the glow of a street lamp. 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. A trick of the light? Someone waiting for a ride? Or something worse? My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to stay still. I refused to live in fear. If Delphine wanted to play games, I was done playing defense. I grabbed my phone and dialed Matthias. He answered on the second ring. Celeste? His voice was groggy. He must have been asleep. Matthias, I need you to check something. Where is Delphine right now? There was a pause. Last I checked, she was in New York. But with Delphine, nothing's ever certain. I swallowed hard, my eyes locked on the figure below. If she was back in Miami, she wasn't here to apologize. The next morning, I woke up to find an envelope slipped under my door. I stared at it for a long moment before picking it up. There was no return address, no markings, just my name, scrawled in elegant, looping script. My stomach tightened. I tore it open, unfolding the single sheet of paper inside. We could have done great things together, Celeste. Pity you never saw the opportunity. I exhaled sharply. There was no anger in her words, no threats, just an unsettling, almost mocking finality. Delphine wasn't trying to fight anymore. She just wanted me to know she was still watching. A cold shiver ran down my spine, but instead of fear, something else rose inside me. I walked over to my kitchen, grabbed a lighter from the drawer, and flicked it on. Holding the letter over the sink, I let the flames curl around the edges of the paper, watching as Delphine's last attempt at control turned to nothing but ash. She might still be out there, but she wasn't going to control me anymore. I was just starting to feel lighter when my phone rang. Lucian. I hesitated before answering. For weeks he had been silent. Now, out of nowhere, he was calling me? I almost let it go to voicemail, almost. Hello? A heavy pause. Then his voice, softer than I remembered. Celeste. I said nothing. He sighed, the exhaustion evident in his tone. I was wrong, and I was weak. I swallowed hard, the words I had wanted to hear for so long, but now that they were here, they felt empty. I know, I said finally. Silence stretched between us. We both knew there was no fixing what had been broken. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. When I hung up, I stared out over the city, the ocean waves crashing in the distance. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking ahead. I had spent months fighting for what was mine. Now, it was time to start living again. The condo felt different, lighter. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel like I was living in a battlefield. I had spent so long fighting, against my father, against Delphine, against my own doubts, that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply exist without looking over my shoulder. I ran my fingers across the edge of my dining table, the smooth wood cool beneath my fingertips. Every piece of furniture, every framed photo, I chose them. This space was finally, truly mine again. And yet, victory didn't erase everything. It didn't erase the memories of Delphine's smirking face. It didn't erase the months of exhaustion, the weight of betrayal, the scars left behind. But I could live with that. I was still standing. I spent the next week methodically removing every last trace of Delphine. Anything she had brought into this place, the gaudy decor, the pretentious art, even the scent of her expensive perfumes that lingered in the air, was gone. I donated furniture, threw away anything that so much as reminded me of her. It wasn't just about reclaiming my home. I was reclaiming myself. When I finished, I stood in the center of my living room, taking it all in. The soft blue hues I had chosen, the shelves lined with books that mattered to me, the photographs of my grandmother, of the life I was finally rebuilding. I exhaled deeply. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. But even as I built something new, part of me knew, the past never disappears completely. A week later, I ran into an old acquaintance at a cafe near the beach. We weren't close, just someone who moved in the same social circles as my father and Delphine. Someone who had tried to warn me once, before everything spiraled out of control. I haven't seen her in a while, I said cautiously. They stirred their coffee, glancing at me over the rim of their cup. You won't, they said simply. She's moved on to her next mark. A cold sensation settled in my stomach. I shouldn't have been surprised. Delphine was a survivor. She had lost this battle, but she wasn't the kind of woman who faded into the background. She would reinvent herself, find another wealthy man to charm, another life to latch onto like a parasite. I could warn them, whoever they were. But would they listen? Would I have listened if someone had told me the truth before I got too deep? I swallowed hard. Some people never change. But I had. I turned away from the conversation, stepping back into my own life, one I had fought for and one I intended to keep. That evening, Lucian sent me a message. It was short. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you find happiness, even if it's without me. I stared at it for a long time. I had spent so much of my life seeking something from him. Approval, love, maybe even just acknowledgement. And now, for the first time, I realized I didn't need it. I read the message one last time, then deleted it. Later that night, I stepped onto my balcony, breathing in the ocean air. The waves rolled in steadily, their rhythm soothing. The sky was endless, stars stretching across it like tiny beacons. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the past to catch up with me. I was finally ready to live. Some stories end with a perfect resolution. Mine didn't. And maybe that was the point. I walked along the beach near my condo, the cool sand shifting beneath my feet as the waves rolled in steady and unchanging. The past few months had felt like a storm I barely survived, but the ocean didn't care about any of that. It just kept moving. Maybe that was the lesson I needed. I had spent so much time fighting, so much time looking over my shoulder, that I had forgotten what it felt like to simply be, to exist in the present. I lost things I never thought I would, but I also gained something I didn't know I needed: myself. Later that afternoon, I sat on my balcony, sipping coffee as the salty breeze rolled in from the water. For the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. I had spent years resenting Lucian, wanting him to acknowledge what he had done, to fix what he had broken. But maybe the real closure wasn't waiting for an apology that would never be enough. Maybe the closure was knowing I didn't need it anymore. I wouldn't erase the past, but I wouldn't let it dictate my future either. I leaned back in my chair, watching the horizon. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, a news alert. I almost ignored it, but then I saw the name: Delphine Ardent. A new lawsuit, another scandal, another victim. I stared at the headline for a moment, my stomach twisting. Not with fear, not even with anger, but with something colder, something final. Some people never change. But she wasn't my problem anymore. I took a deep breath, then did something I never thought I'd do. I turned off my phone. I had spent too much time in her shadow. It was time to step into my own light. And so, I did. That night, I sat with a sketchpad in my lap, running my pencil across the page. For so long, everything I created had been about rebuilding something that was lost. Fixing, restoring, reclaiming. This was different. This wasn't about the past. It was about the future. A new project, a new vision, a new life. This time, I wasn't designing something for anyone else. This time, I was doing it for me. Life doesn't always give us perfect endings, and maybe that's the point. I fought for what was mine, but in the end, the real victory wasn't just winning. It was reclaiming myself. The past leaves scars, but it doesn't define us. We choose what comes next. If my journey has taught me anything, it's this: strength isn't about never falling, it's about rising every single time. If you believe in resilience, in rebuilding, in choosing yourself, stay with me. Let's keep growing together. Subscribe for more.